everybody, and welcome to another episode of Roar, the podcast. I'm absolutely delighted today to have Lisa Forte with me. Lisa is a partner at Red Goat Security and very, very passionate about cybersecurity and raising awareness of the importance of cybersecurity, as well as diversity in our industry and respect in our industry. So the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda, very close to both Lisa and my hearts. And that's why I invited Lisa today to join us, because I really wanted to have a conversation with someone who has deep, deep, deep personal experience in this area, and really looking forward to hear what you've got to say. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Wonderful. So I always start my podcasts with a bit of a tell us a little bit about Lisa the person. Just who are you, and why do you get out of bed in the mornings?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a weird one, actually. I'm not your average kind of person or guest, I suppose. My main passions in life are climbing and mountaineering and caving. I also like to go and explore, which always sounds really strange when I say it, but I like to go and explore abandoned mines in the middle of nowhere.
Seen that. I've seen a lot of that. It looks pretty dangerous, pretty scary.
I think it's, for me, what I like about all of those adventures actually is that they're so all consuming. You're just thinking about yourself, your safety. How do I stay safe? Am I okay? Are my team okay? Avoiding disaster. That it's actually, it sounds really strange, but it's actually my most peaceful time, because what I'm not doing is worrying about work or an argument or anything else that happens in my life is not preoccupying me and causing me anxiety.
Yeah.
All I'm thinking about is I need to clip into something here because there's a high chance I'm going to die. And that's really like, it sounds a very strange thing to say, but it's really relaxing.
Amazing. And tell us about your obsession with Elon Musk and Bitcoin.
He will be my husband one day. He
Ah.
will. You've heard it here first. Yeah, I have to say, a lot of people hate Elon Musk. I really like him. I think he's so sort of off the charts in so many ways, and he's achieved an awful lot. I'm a huge space geek, which is probably where it comes from. So love SpaceX, absolutely love all of the stuff that they're doing. Really fascinated by all of it. And I just think he's a disruptor, isn't he? By the truest nature of the word, Absolutely. He is a disruptor of so many things, many things.
Absolutely. And what I love so much about him is his authenticity, that absolute, he is just his own person, and he really doesn't care about what other people think. And and he's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, such a brilliant mind, such an innovator, such an innovator.
And if you compare him to like Jeff Bezos, who, in my opinion, is much more curated, much more kind of, I don't feel that the person you see on TV or the person who you see on Twitter from a Jeff Bezos perspective is really who Jeff Bezos is at all. He is whatever image they are portraying. Yeah. Whereas Elon, I really genuinely feel that, like it or not, that's who he is. And he doesn't care. And if he tweets something and it is outrageous, people are horrified by it, but that is just who he is.
Yeah. No, it's incredible, I have to say, and I always enjoy your tweets very much about about him and about space and about Bitcoin, and it's just wonderful. It's so refreshing and it's so different, and that's also what's so wonderful about you, is your authenticity and sharing what you are passionate about. I'm going to jump in because I want to sort of pick up on that theme, in the sense that you are very passionate and present on social media, and you're always sort of weathering, I would say, a lot of storms in terms of backlash, because you also speak your truth. Roar is all about having the courage to speak your truth, so you speak up for the things that you care about, but of course that comes with consequences. So tell us a little bit more about that sort of experience on social media and some of the backlash that you get.
Yeah, I think probably many years ago when I first started out, I really truly believed that having a big following on social media was pretty good. That's what you needed to shoot for. That was going to give you something tangible in life. was going to make you happy. I don't know. What I've found as my followers have grown is that actually generally a large proportion of people have a good laugh, or will either just not engage with you or will have a good laugh with you. But there's a big chunk of people as well who are just out for blood, to be honest. And they'll say anything, they'll tell people anything, they'll post anything. And it can get off the charts really quickly. I mean, I posted a photo of a monkey ages ago, and it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I posted this photo of the monkey and I said something like, oh, this is the cutest monkey ever, or something really innocuous like that. And within probably 10 to 15 minutes, I started getting horrible messages, horrible comments, accusing me of promoting animal trafficking, accusing me of being part of the problem of global animal trafficking and the demise of some species, all from this photo. And it's just so reactive. So people are just, I just think that they've got into the situation where they feel that, yes, we can say anything, but that doesn't mean we should.
Yeah. And this is the thing, right? And I think, we have that whole thing of, if you say it to someone's face, you think twice before you say something. But because you're anonymous, or a lot of the times you are anonymous, or you can hide behind a computer, it's so much easier to criticize and to really demean and make people feel and destruct and just really be so absolutely horribly inappropriate. So yeah, I'm sorry that you've had that experience, and I know from our conversations that you've had many more that potentially have been a lot more personal as well.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing that's kind of, it's the flip side of everything, right? And I think one thing I've learned, and I've been guilty of this myself actually, is that when someone has lashed out on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever platform, lots of people rush in to that person's aid. I've done it, and you do it because you're trying to defend your friend, right? And you're trying to stick up for your friend, and you think this is horrible, and if you think this is morally justifiable, so you get involved. And we call these like pylons on social media. And I've seen a few of them this year, which have really made me open my mind, where it's gone completely out of hand. And the individual who may have done something that wasn't particularly well thought out, but was definitely not really, war crime level of behavior. And they've been doxxed, and they've been targeted, and they've been harassed, and they've had their wife and their kid harassed, and all this stuff, because someone called them out online. And what I've kind of opened my eyes to, and I used to partake in some of these and sort of stand up for my friends, but probably too aggressively as well, is that actually you can become the bully really easily, and you think it's justified, but then the bully thinks it's justified too. So
yeah, and that really nicely segues us into this whole conversation of narcissism. So in my book, I position narcissism as something that we all have. We all have a desire to feel special, and that's simply put what narcissism is. But if you have too little or too much narcissism, that's when it becomes a problem. So yeah, it's amazing. I love that. I love that you've had that insight, because I think often we've been the bullies, but we've also been the targets. We've been on the receiving end, and most of the times I think it is that inadvertently we've become the bully, because it's something that we feel so strongly about, but we're only stepping into our own perspective. We don't necessarily see the other person's perspective and really try and understand where they were coming from, right? And so really, I think, we've been sort of tagged in a lot of conversations about narcissism. So I'm curious to know your sort of view on it and sort of experience with narcissism.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one. I think there's a lot of people who think they understand it, but the more I've read on narcissism, the more I realize how difficult it is to spot, right, as a victim. Because I was reading, so Chris Hadnagy, I know he's one of your personal friends, one of mine as well. He's written a lot on the topic, and he wrote about how the initial phase of being contacted by narcissists, and this is whether it's romantically, friendship, professional, whatever capacity, is this kind of love bombing phase where they are like the most charming people imaginable. You think, wow, this person is going to be the love of my life, or my best friend, or the best business colleague I could have ever had,
The best boss.
the best boss, the best, whatever. And you are completely intoxicated by this person, largely because they're mirroring you back to you. And they're really good at it. And then it all starts to fall apart. And I know you and I have had lots of personal conversations on this, but people like who have said to me that all of a sudden someone's just not responded to any of their messages and just ignored them, and it leaves them feeling anxious. And in this one article, it said that when we get ghosted, when we get completely ignored, it can make us feel almost physical pain from this behavior. And it's all about control. It's narcissists, I think, are people who go beyond just the need to feel special and feel desired, and it goes to a point where they feel like they need to have control over people because their life is so chaotic themselves. And it's really, really difficult. And I read this one thing that I just need to point out, which I think is really awesome. And this writer wrote that whenever you see someone who you think might be a narcissist and they've posted something, or they've written something, or they've texted you something, anything, any communication, the first immediate reaction you have to that is the reaction they want. So that's the reaction you cannot give them. And I think that's so powerful, that you've got to realize, oh, they want me to feel angry, so I'm not going to send them the angry message.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said. It's that sort of mirror, and it's projecting onto you how they feel really deep down inside, that chaos, that insecurity, and so they don't, half the time or most of the time, they don't even realize it. I mean, obviously it's crazy to think that they don't know this, but so often people project onto you, and they don't actually realize that it is because they are so deeply insecure themselves, because they just haven't got that awareness. But it's so important that what you're saying, and I want to reiterate that, because that's the whole, being able to spot the bully, being able to spot the narcissist, because it's really hard, as you say, and looking out for those signs, recognizing the person's behavior. Of course, we want to give someone the benefit of the doubt, but if you start picking up patterns and repetition, you can start building a bit of a story, and you can start seeing that person's behavior. They say they're sorry, but they don't behave like they're sorry. They just, their words and their actions don't marry up, and they just become more and more manipulative. I always describe my sort of experience as this massive roller coaster. So one day my boss was the most charming, best boss to work for, and then the next day it was absolutely horrible shouting and aggression. And it's that sort of what really threw me in the end, and what caused, I think, a lot of my anxiety, was that not knowing which version of him I was going to be facing today. Just because they do that, they have this, and it comes back to exactly what you said, is that control, that desire to control situations.
Yeah, and I think that leads on to the final stage that is often seen when a narcissist completely disengages from you, or you disengage from them, which is probably more likely. The smear campaign of that then results. And you'll notice this because there's a lot of people who you just fall out with, or you drift apart from, and they'll just go their separate ways and get on with their life. And then there'll be some people who are like, no, I need to take this person down. That's going to be my whole thing. And that's probably not a sign of a healthy person. That's probably the sign of someone who is quite deeply troubled and needs some help. Because let's face it, we're all so busy at the best of times. It must take a lot of energy to run a smear campaign against someone. But this is all hallmarks of it. And I think the thing that I've really realized since knowing you actually is how many people have encountered and been seriously affected by narcissism, both romantically, friendship-wise, or in the workplace. It's really, it's a bit sort of upsetting, really, that a lot of these people just can continue to go from victim to victim to victim and not.
And they get away with it.
Exactly.
Every freaking single time. Yeah. That's why I wrote my book, Lisa. It's because I got so angry, because at the beginning I was like, happening to me. Nobody else has ever been bullied, right? It's just me. And then conversation after conversation after conversation, people shared their relatable experiences with me, and I'm like, this is happening. This is a silent epidemic. This is happening to a lot of people. Now, my focus was in the workplace setting based on my own experience, but as you say, every time I do a presentation and I speak about narcissism, there's at least one person in the audience that has that in their personal life too, which is really quite heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
So, what do we do? What is your sort of advice for coping? So let's say you are working with a narcissist, or you are in a relationship with a narcissist. What would you sort of give as your top tips for dealing with that person?
I think if you can, get out. And if that means leaving the job, leave the job. If that means leaving the relationship, leave the relationship, leave the friendship, whatever it is. If you can do that, that's the optimal situation, because everything I've read, they don't change. They don't change. That's who they are forever. And I think if you can't get out, then the best thing to do is try to make yourself a really boring person to be involved with. So don't react to them. Don't get angry. Don't get upset. If they don't reply to you, don't beg them. Don't send them message after message after message. Don't play into any games that they play. Just be boring and hope. And it sounds really horrible to say this, but you want essentially them to move on to their next target, which I know is horrible. But ultimately, you have to be a bit selfish in life. And, even not from a narcissistic perspective, but just from a sort of bullying perspective online, sometimes I just disconnect from social media. At the moment, I'm not on Instagram. I'm just logged out. I'm not going to log in for ages. And it's just kind of a break for me, because I sort of feel that sometimes you have to put yourself first, even though it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, Lisa, is that protecting your mental health. And I think disconnecting for a little while from social media sometimes just give you that perspective again, in terms of what's important, because we become so reactive and kind of consumed by technology and by the rat race. So taking some time out, I think, is incredibly important. When you were saying about become a boring person, I sort of chuckled a little bit, because I'm like, I use the phrase, don't catch the hot potato, because that's exactly what the narcissists want. They want the reaction. And it's literally as they cycle people in and out. So the moment that you don't respond, as you say, to them, they will move on to their next target. And of course, all my life's work is based around getting justice and, creating safe and inclusive environments where people can thrive, and really helping organizations to realize when they have a toxic person, a brilliant jerk in the organization, and actually really challenging them to say, how much is it costing you to tolerate this brilliant jerk? And can you really afford it? So I think, and I'd be really curious in your views, is how much we are progressing this conversation. How much do you see organizations actually beginning to take action against some of these, let's call them brilliant jerks?
I think it's been a bit of a slow burn. So we, a group of us, launched Respecting Security this year, which is an initiative that aims to stamp out the worst hate and harassment in InfoSec as an industry, as an information cybersecurity industry. And one of the ways we decided upon doing that was to ask companies to take our pledge. And what this means is that companies will pledge that they will take action if people abuse their employees. But similarly, if someone comes to them and says, your CISO or your whoever has sent me all this horrible stuff on LinkedIn, or has done this abusive stuff to me, and here's the evidence, that they will take appropriate action their end. And that's not mandating that they get fired or they do a disciplinary on that person. It may very well be that that person just needs some support because they're going through something, right? Yes. But it's for the employer to have some discussion and open some line of communication with this person. At the very least, is to say, stop it, this isn't appropriate.
Yes.
Because I think one of the things that we found when we started Respecting Security, and we were like doing some research just to feel around what was going on, so many people were saying, like we were thinking, oh, it must be loads of anonymous accounts, but actually almost almost all of the initial reports came in from people who were saying, I know exactly who it is, it's come from their actual LinkedIn with their name, but they know I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I think we have to start, you know, it's a bit like when you're a child and the things that you will do and won't do are very much dependent on whether you think you're going to get into trouble with your mum and dad. So we have to have consequences for our actions. We can't act with impunity because human beings don't act well when we're given that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I have the, you know, the fortunate, I mean, I'm fortunate to work with lots of different organizations, and you know, I've seen some really, really toxic organizations, but I've also seen some really fantastic organizations where you can really see leaders take it as their moral and their legal duty to create that safe and inclusive environment where people can really thrive. And it is about protecting people's health, you know, mental and physical health, in terms of how people show up. You spend so much of your time at work, don't you? And I love the Respect and Security Initiative. I'm one of the organizations that pledged as well. So really are promoting the amazing work that you're doing. Where can people find more information about that?
So Respect and Security, Respect and Sec, we have a Twitter account, we have a website, you can see the pledge on there, you can download banners and things like that. There's also an individual pledge that you can take, which basically is the saying that you're saying to the world, essentially, like, I'm not going to engage in abusive conduct, I'm going to engage in debate respectfully, and I'm not going to do things that are abusive, which I don't think is a high bar to ask from people. So they can do that as well. And I think the importance of it for me, and I can't speak for the rest of the co-founders, but for me was that some of the stuff that I've had over the past couple of years has been really bad. And it kind of left me feeling like everyone hated me. And I was this horrible person. And, you know, there were moments where I would literally sit on the floor and cry. And I'm somebody who, on the face of it at least, you know, I come from a privileged background. I've got no mental health issues. I've got, you know, supportive friends and family, money to pay for lawyers, and, you know, I'm not in a vulnerable state. And it made me think, if you were suffering with depression or anxiety or bipolar, or you were going through a divorce or a custody battle or anything that is already loading you, and then you endured this, I genuinely think there are people who would be in danger of hurting themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what's so concerning about this, that for me, if that is the effect it has on me, what does it have to people who are suffering more?
Yeah, absolutely. And just listening to you there, my heart sort of sinks, because it's the true reality, and putting yourself into the shoes of the vulnerable. I think if more people can start doing that, I think we will have a much more conscientious, kind society in general. And it's all about perspective, and it's all about seeing life from the other person's perspective as well. So
yeah, because you don't have to like people. You can dislike people. You can hate people. That's completely fine.
Absolutely.
But you do that in a respectful way, and you just ignore them, and you just stay away from them and let them get on with their lives, and you get on with your life. And I think that's the better way to do it. And I may not have always conducted myself impeccably. I'm not saying that I have. No one is, I think, beyond reproach. But I've definitely learned some lessons over the last year, and I think definitely checked my conduct as well, because sometimes I can get riled up when I shouldn't do.
Yeah. It's such amazing self-awareness, and I think if anything, you know, the last couple of years have really humbled so many of us, because we've just had, for once, I think the whole world and everybody was in the same boat, in terms of, you know, we were all confined to a space and not being able to freely move. And for some of us that was fine, because we have loving families and relationships, but for others it was living hell. And it's really, as you say, appreciating that what you have, but also to really put yourself into other people's shoes and to
Hmm.
really empathize. And every time someone perhaps says something inappropriate or do something inappropriate, really challenging yourself and asking where's that person coming from, and really trying, being curious. I always say be curious, not furious. So being curious about the perspective of the other person and where they're coming from.
And if you have a problem with somebody and you think that they've done something horrible to you, or anything, or you just disagree with what they've written, approach them privately, send them a message and just say, this is the issue I have. Give them the opportunity to respond, and just do it respectfully, because actually a lot of the time I've had a couple of people recently who have said something like, I don't like your post because of this, that, and the other. And they've done it in a respectful way. We've had a conversation about it and it's been fine. There's a big difference between that and then writing something hugely inflammatory in the comments of someone's post or on your own post, deliberately to poke at this person.
Sort of publicly naming and shaming.
Exactly. And it's, yeah, I don't, I think you've just, I think we've lost the ability as humans to just go, okay, I'm going to walk away. And that's an option. We don't have to react to everything.
Absolutely.
We've got into this pattern of going, I have to react to absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And it's just not the case.
Yeah, and I love what you said about have the courageous conversation. If I reflect on ROAR for a moment and the 4-step process, so recognize, observe, assert, redirect, which is the 4 steps that you can use to have a difficult conversation. If you follow that recipe, you can really pretty much have a conflict conversation, difficult conversation with someone, and create a really productive outcome. So yeah, have the conversation and have it in a private setting, have it one-to-one. Of course, don't have that conversation if you don't feel safe, so I'm always caveating this with, if you're in a very toxic situation and you're dealing with a dangerous person, a dangerous narcissist, don't put yourself into sort of harm's way. So if you then have to speak to someone that you do trust and you can confide in. But wherever you have the option, have the difficult conversation. Lisa, why is this such a big problem in the cyber and information security industry?
I think I've had this question a lot this year, and I think it's not unique to the industry. I think a lot of industries have the same issues. The reason I think it's particularly obvious in the infosec industry is because as a community, we are very, very, very online. We have a very strong online presence in a way that a lot of industries don't. We have big, Discord and Twitter and all these other things where we interact with other infosec people. So that automatically opens you up to more undesirable people being involved and sort of poisoning that otherwise healthy discussion. Yeah. So I think that's the first thing. And I think, we've typically been a bit of a community who can sometimes be a little bit anarchistic, a little bit on the fringe of things, using anonymous accounts, having very strong opinions on different things. And I think sometimes they can clash. And I think for me, I definitely have, just speaking to friends and other people who have had quite horrible situations over the last year, it seems to have really exploded. And the only thing I can put that down to is COVID and the pandemic and the stresses that's put on our lives. But there's been so many people who have had, we had one gentleman who contacted Respect and Security, and he'd been horribly bullied by other people in the industry who we knew. They'd even created fake accounts for him to try and destroy his name and his reputation. They'd done some horrible things. We had a woman who had sought out a mentor who then got sexually harassed by that mentor within basically a day. Horrible, hideous conversations. And I think for all of us at Respect and Security, one thing that it did actually, which was really interesting, is we kind of started at thinking that it was predominantly women who were the victims and predominantly men who were the perpetrators. What we have found is that that's not true at all. There are equal amounts of women and men as victims and equal amounts as perpetrators as well. And it's really interesting. So it's not a gender issue. It's not a race issue. It's not a disability issue. It's a human issue.
And I can back that up with my research. I was very surprised to learn that 30% of the people said the bully was female. That was kind of at the sort of sea level. What was interesting, more shocking, I should say, was the fact that the majority of women who came to me and who gave me interviews were bullied by women.
Really?
Yeah. So that was also a very shocking statistic, and I was just quite, that was a bit of a dark moment for me, because I really honestly believe that we are stronger together, and especially as women we have to stand together and we have to support each other. It's something I'm really passionate about. I feel very, very strongly about. So yeah, that was a bit of a dark moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think in some ways it is dark, but in some ways I think it's comforting that we don't have a specific group of individuals who are being maliciously targeted,
Yeah.
which is a positive thing.
Yeah.
It's not positive that it affects everybody, but there are even people who are like CISOs, who are big, strong blokes who get targeted and bullied, and there are young interns who are also bullied. So I think in a way this affects all of us, and that's why it's so important that instead of just ignoring it, we actually start to do something about it before we recruit more people into our industry.
Absolutely, and I think also recognizing that it's the power conversation again, it's the control conversation again. So recognizing what's within your gift to control. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned through my personal experience was that I was so trying to control the other person, and I have this kind of illusion of control, and it's like, no, I wasn't controlling anything. I had to really kind of, take my control. I mean, it's like taking it back, but it's really recognizing that it wasn't going to come from the outside. If I wanted to win this battle in a way, I really had to kind of look deep inside, hold the mirror up, and take responsibility for the way that I'm also responding and reacting, mostly defensive, or with kind of walking away and just being silent and quiet. And it's like, no, that's not going to solve the problem.
I hate to quote Russell Brand, because not everyone, he's a bit Marmite. Some people might not like him, but he said something that really resonated with me, and that I'm very, very guilty of myself. And that he said, if you're expecting someone to show up for you, and you're expecting someone to be this perfect partner, friend, business colleague, whatever, and historically they've been up and down, or they've been absent, or they've been narcissistic, or they've been whatever, and you're expecting them to show up and care about you and send you those nice messages and do those things for you, that problem isn't with them, it's with you. Because in your mind, you are setting yourself this thing where you're saying they're going to do this, they're then obviously not going to do it, and then you're going to feel really hurt and disappointed. And so often I think I've done that, where I've kind of assumed people are going to be nice, or they're going to care, or they're going to change, and they don't. And then I go through the entire process again.
Yeah. And I think that again, we said earlier, you said this so beautifully, this is a human problem. And it's just human nature for us to expect that, to have those expectations, to expect the good in others. But actually, recognizing that, if that person has let you down one too many times, perhaps it's a sign, to actually step away and just protect yourself, and really just kind of focusing on what can I control within this situation. I think I love Russell Brand as well. I mean, I didn't used to in the past, but I mean, he's had such an amazing transformation himself over the years, and really respect. I mean, he's gone to the deepest, darkest holes. So real respect for that guy, and what he's all about today.
And I think the other thing I would say, in terms of just survival, whether that's like social media stuff or bullying, or having someone who upsets you in personal or professional life, is making sure you're disconnecting at points and going out and doing something. So for me, obviously, it's climbing, it's caving, that kind of thing. And that's my free time, where I'm free and I'm not connected and I'm not involved. And that's Lisa's time to be me. And I think that's so important. And I probably would have been the first person to tell you that's rubbish a few years ago. But now I definitely see the advantage. Just log out and just go. I'm having 4 days, 2 days, a weekend, whatever it is. I'm logging out of everything. I'm not going to answer anything unless it's really urgent. and I'm just going to spend time with my kids or with my partner or on my own doing adventures, whatever it is, because I think that's the point where you can reset your brain and you can get some clarity that you can't get when you're in it.
Absolutely. It's getting that perspective, isn't it? So I love that. I challenge a lot of the time. I challenge my clients to think about how much. So I say, take out your list, your to-do list, and take out your calendar, and where do you feature on there? And 9 times out of 10, it's nowhere because we don't prioritize ourselves. And I say, prioritize yourself on your list of priorities. Write that down because we have to really invest so much in our own wellness, as well as any other project, or as much as any other project we invest in. So I love that you recognize the importance of that. And yeah,
the importance of caving. Subtext to this thing, get everybody out and going
caving, because you're right, you just cannot think of anything else, right?
And you don't have any phone reception at all down a cave, so nobody can send you messages and nobody can tell you something bad's happened. You are literally, it's the best place. It's the best place to be, everybody, honestly.
Amazing. No, it still looks dangerous to me, but I think I might go with you one day and give it a try, especially in Wales.
Yes.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today.